In the first year of Xianheng, 670 AD, Emperor Li Ji of the Tang dynasty, together with Empress Wu, known as the Two Saints of the Heavenly Family, occurred in the imperial and later clans, noble families, aristocratic families, prestigious families, high-ranking officials, aristocratic and noble families, aristocratic families, aristocratic and noble families, aristocratic and noble families, aristocratic and noble families, aristocratic and noble individuals, ordinary scholars, rural gentry, wealthy and wealthy merchants, ordinary merchants, and even peddlers, as well as in various social classes and classes, resulting in power disputes and conflicts of interest, love and hate, right and wrong, grudges and grudges, conspiracies and schemes, killing methods, marching armies, bloody battles, fierce warriors like Xiong Bei, iron-clad Tiger Ben. The infamous and elusive Royal Guard has a government office. A mysterious assassin organization that is vicious and ruthless in its methods. The black-clad men, swordsmen, and cavalry braving from east to west and from north to south. But the elite of 10,000 cavalries, who have heard of its name but disappeared without a trace. Even the millennia-long struggle between Xian men and Yin men at the same time, it also shaped heroic warriors and capable officials with flesh and blood, such as Di Renjie, Qin Zheng, Qin Su, Qin Shao, Qin Dong, Shao Fengwu, Sima Feiying, Sima Zhuixing, and Sima Kongling. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Two inner eunuchs appearing in pink ink. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It is about 20 miles south of Daizhou City in Hedong Province. A treacherous canyon with rugged rocks, towering cliffs, rugged roads, and narrow and difficult to navigate. The local people, who are simple, honest, and lack much insight or cultural knowledge, adapted to local conditions and understood the meaning of the text. They followed the map and, as the name suggests, vividly called this dangerous area Wanchur Valley. This is also the Ripple Canyon clearly marked on the geographical map of Daizhou Mountains and Rivers in Hedong Province. At the beginning of the month in mid-spring February. This should have been a seasonal scene of spring breeze blowing, all things reviving, grass and leaves turning green, warm water and duck knowledge, clear sky and scenery, and moist rain like pastry. But at this moment, a piercing and unexpected spring cold current is roaring and wreaking havoc among the towering mountains, slopes and valleys of northern Shaanxi. On the hazy and gloomy sky that threatens to destroy the city, it can be said that the clouds are dense and the wind is blowing hard. Seeing another snowfall of goose feathers pouring down the sky, it is about to make its debut in Daizhou, Yanmen, and even Xinzhou, Shuozhou, Yunzhou, and other places, just like the military prefecture towns on the border of the Great Wall. Under such harsh weather conditions, as long as the local people and villagers in northern Shaanxi are normal, if they are not forced to go out to deal with urgent and difficult situations, the most important thing they need to do at this time is to pile up enough firewood and grass in their own houses, and burn the brazier vigorously. The whole family sat around the thatched kong in the big house, taking all the bedding and bedding that could keep them warm, covering themselves, and then hiding inside to keep warm. What kind of silly and foolish person, 205, who has eaten their fill, would go to this rare and desolate mountain range in such a cold and freezing weather, and endure the cold, biting and howling wind, eating the wind and drinking the soil? It's possible that wild animals like leopards, wolves, and other wild animals searching for food in the wilderness will be caught and eaten by them, and then they will become piles of animal feces, and it is precisely such a harsh weather, with the howling cold wind, the howling of cold crows, the withering of all things, and the approaching heavy snow. In this steep and rugged rocky canyon, there is a group of vehicles, horses, and pedestrians who are struggling to trek on the winding northward official road. This is a caravan composed of about 100 people, either ordinary officials and officials, or cavalry warriors in ordinary attire. What is said here is ordinary, which is only compared with those local officials like Ground Beetle and the big heads of the local military officials. These officials, petty officials, and cavalry warriors were covered in cotton clothes, hakama, armor, and robes that provided excellent warmth, all over their bodies. They also wore cowhide boots and a dark gray cotton robe and cloak. The mounts under the crotch are also tall and robust Heshi steeds, but if you look at them, you will know that these officials and knights are not ordinary and comparable high-end goods. The only difference in their attire, whether it be officials or cavalry warriors, is whether they are wearing felt hats or helmets on their heads. The heads of the officials are all wearing black round felt hats, and the inner layer of the felt hats is made of thickened warm kapok. Several high-ranking officials have round felt hats on their heads made of animal fur corresponding to their official rank. The heads of the cavalry warriors were covered in thick fur helmets, and the only difference was that they had different official ranks. On the heads of the commanding officers and assistant generals, they naturally wore helmets made of 6th grade golden biao fur, while those below 7th grade generals wore leather helmets made of rhinoceros leather. If there's anything else different between them, that is the face of the cavalry soldiers. In addition to being coated with a thick layer of butter to prevent cold, freezing, cracking, and cracking, there is also a layer of thick linen cloth face towels wrapped outside for warmth, wind and sand protection. There are only 2 perfectly sized holes and openings at the positions of the eyes, mouth, and nose, to facilitate their observation, vigilance, and breathing needs. And on the heads and faces of those officials and petty officials, apart from being coated with a thick layer of butter fat to prevent cold, freezing, and cracking, there is nothing else that can hide them. This also made them, the officials and officials who had been struggling for several days in the desolate mountains of northern Shaanxi, braving the howling and piercing cold currents, eating the wind and soil, and enduring the cold and cold. Those 2 of them were hard-faced black-faced eggs, just like freshly baked donkey dung eggs from the pile of charcoal and ash, black and dirty. They could no longer be seen. At the center of the convoy, several box-style carriages were slowly driving, surrounded by dark gray box cloth. The leading carriage is a box carriage pulled by 2 horses. On the shaft of the carriage, in the position of the carriage handle, sat a capable man in his 30s, dressed in a long whip, a half-sized cotton jacket, and cotton hakama cloth boots. This capable man, who was obviously not a professional carriage driver, sat calmly in the position of the driver, like a stone sculpture that had never been afraid of the cold and freezing, facing the waves of wind that swept by like a bone-scraping steel knife. If it weren't for him, the occasional sound of lightly scolding and riding horses, if it weren't for every 10 or so breaths, there would be 2 white columns of smoke, about feet long and about the thickness of a teacup, shooting out from his nostrils as he breathed in and out. Those cavalry warriors who walked side by side with him would really treat this middle-aged man, like a clay sculpture or stone carving, as a silent, motionless, and fearless accessory decoration. But to see this capable man who can endure the bitter cold, with every move and every breath, his eyes shining brightly from time to time, one should know that he is definitely a skilled and powerful person. Inside the carriage of a box carriage. On the left and right sides of the bed, there are 2 middle-aged men sitting face to face, dressed in casual clothes but with noble status. On their heads, they all wore a gray-brown lynx leather hat, symbolizing the 5th rank official body. The tall and thin middle-aged man on the left was wearing a navy blue silk cotton robe, while the shorter and chubby middle-aged man on the right was wearing a gray-black robe, with a black cotton hakama underneath and a pair of cowhide official boots. On the outside of the silk cotton robe, there is also a dark gray cotton robe cloak. These 2 middle-aged men, who were of high status, were the notorious Imperial Household Guard Bureau, also known as the Imperial Household Guard Office. They were of high rank and were both under the 5th rank of the Imperial Household Attendant, Huang Fuxia, and the Right Household Attendant, Shi Jing. Both of them were high-ranking royal guards with real power and prominent officials, as well as Yangzhou people from the misty and rainy areas of Jiangnan. Therefore, Old Xia and Old Shi, this pair of difficult brothers, naturally felt unbearable and abhorrent towards the remote mountainous area of northern Jin, where birds do not defecate. This cold and bitter spring weather, with cold currents raging and cold winds howling, made them feel unbearable headaches and excruciating disgust. In addition, since the end of the first lunar month, 2 imperial court officials have been close attendants, obeying the orders of the court, and after receiving this secret mission, they set off from Chang'an in the capital city. On this journey, it can be truly said that they are galloping on horseback, day by day without stopping. After 7 or 8 consecutive days of rapid driving, there were hardly any decent opportunities to recuperate and rest on the road. Therefore, these 2 royal guards, who had been in the palace for a long time, lived in luxurious clothing, food, and care, had real power and power. Since 3 days ago, their team of chariots and horses arrived at the capital of Taiyuan in Hedong province, Bingzhou, and had no desire to ride any horse. But instead, he wisely made the most correct choice. He plunged into this ordinary carriage and refused to kill the 2 of them. The southern body, which could not bear such severe cold and pain, was once again immersed in the piercing and howling cold wind. The carriage, which can only accommodate 4 adults and barely sits upright, only has a large brazier filled with charcoal fire, with one placed on each side. However, even with such luxurious heating facilities, they could not stop the 2 imperial guards who were close attendants. They constantly felt and experienced the piercing and raging mountain wind, and the piercing cold that penetrated through every corner. Under duress, these 2 eunuchs, who were completely intolerant of the cold, had to carry a huge and hot stove in their arms before finally settling down slightly. This pair of difficult brothers from the land of fireworks and apricot rain in Jiangnan were afraid of the cold and turned pale from the wind. The carriage, which had long been boiling with heat waves and scorching heat, was afraid that if it encountered a spark, it would immediately burst open. At this moment, apart from the occasional sound of charcoal fire, beeping, inside 2 huge braziers, it was a silent and quiet scene where needles could be heard falling. Only the consistent and monotonous sound of horse hooves on the front, back, left, and right sides of the carriage, as well as the screeching and creaking sounds generated by the friction between the wheels and axles of the box carriage, constantly disturbed the people in the exhausted and bored sedan. I don't know how long it had been, but An sat on the right side of the carriage, looking about 30.5 or 6 years old. The royal guard, with a fair round face and fine eyebrows and eyes, was finally able to open his long closed eyes. He first stretched a big lazy waist, hoping to use it to attract the attention of his companions, but after seeing that this action did not achieve the desired effect, this guy applied those insidious precautions to other tricks. "If you pretend I can't sleep, I'll use it for you," murmured my old magic weapon. "Let's see who we are and who can endure it. 15,000 stones of corn, 20,000 stones of millet, 200 carts of burlap, 30,000 kilograms of tea, 100 carts of high-quality iron materials. There are also 2,000 excellent iron pots, 60 carts of sea salt, 40 carts of fish glue." The inner guard Xianhuan, with a fair round face and fine eyebrows and eyes, kept muttering these complex and boring contents in his mouth repeatedly, about 7, 8, or 10 times. Moreover, this guy is still muttering these boring contents repeatedly, while occasionally rolling his eyelids to take a glance. Could the attendant on the other side, Xianhuan, have any different facial expressions or reactions? However, when he saw An sitting opposite him again, about 30.6 or 7 years old, with a slightly black face, high nose and big eyes, and a tall and thin middle-aged eunuch, he not only ignored and remained indifferent to his deliberate grumbling behavior, but even now, on his thin and disheveled face, there was still a calm and focused expression with slightly closed eyes. This white, round-faced, slender eyebrows and eyes of the eunuch, obviously, could no longer endure it. Chapter 2. Extremely Eerie and Covert Conversations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. His grandmother has a leg. I have been suffering for several days now, but you old Xia seems to have nothing to do, seeing you day after day from morning till night, damn it. They all have a dead and stinky face like a thief fighting a bird. Fuck a damn hammer. No matter how much. If I don't take care of what I've been holding in my heart for days, I'll ask all the damn questions and say that one day, I'll suffocate to death in this wilderness. Old Xia, if we have something to ask you, don't pretend to sleep with us. At the inner court Yamen in Chang'an, the capital city, when you and I, from the hands of the eunuch Chu Tiannan Chu Gonggang, took on this secret mission, he had never told our two families before. This time, we needed you and me, along with those people from the north, to transport and deliver such a vast and diverse variety of food, supplies, and daily necessities. Surprisingly, the variety and quantity would be so diverse. And it wasn't until our group of people arrived at the capital of Taiyuan that we dressed in micro-clothes and traveled alone. In the northern suburbs of the city, at the secret location called Kixinjian on the south side of the inner campus military field, we received the tokens needed for the secret defense investigation, checked all the goods we needed, and secretly provided to people from the north, including the types, quantities, documents, and account books. Only then did we realize that the family ties we bear are so huge. Old Xia, there's no one else here. You and I can tell the truth between us. Our family just can't figure it out. She's an elderly person, doesn't know how to think and consider things. Surprisingly, she would suddenly take out such a large quantity in diverse variety of supplies and goods, go ahead and pay. The chubby and fair-skinned Nei Shijing, originally intended to use a sensitive phrase of support to express his true feelings in his heart. Just halfway through this sensitive phrase of support, Shijing felt in his heart that if he really used the term support, which had some connotations of internal and external collusion and surrender and betrayal on her elderly family, it should be an extremely disrespectful and untimely scumbag. No. No. To be precise, that should definitely be a heinous and unforgivable sin. Therefore, just as Shijing was about to say the word capital, he took the tender little tongue inside his mouth and sucked in a small circle along the direction of his mouth, swallowing the word support and the word help silently. So, the language and rhetoric that changed the nature of the entire statement became the following. Z comes from those bastards who have nothing to do with them, and have always been inexperienced in feeding. The speed of flipping faces is almost like surpassing the speed of flipping books. We really can't figure it out, where is the truth here? Old Xia, listen to our family talk to you and say. According to the military headquarters of our country, there are over 100,000 border soldiers stationed in the northern part of the border and at the foot of the Yin mountain. With their formidable and brave military strength, even if they cannot be directly eradicated from the root, they are all scoundrels. Before Shijing had a fair round face, fine eyebrows, and delicate eyes, he had accumulated doubts, resentment in his heart for several days, all of which were poured out and spurted out to his heart's content at this moment. Huangfu Xian'e, who had always had his eyes slightly closed and speechless, as if an old monk had settled down, suddenly opened his eyes without anger or arrogance. In his sparkling eyes, he could be said to be shining brightly in an instant. A low and deep shout, like a spring thunder on the tongue, suddenly sounded inside the carriage. When you're old, be cautious. As he was about to improvise, Shijing was given the task. Suddenly, he was given the task by Huangfu Xian'e. With this low and profound interruption, he was stunned on the spot. After about 5 or 6 breaths had passed, Shijing, who was in a state of confusion, woke up as if suddenly thinking of something terrifying. His white, round and chubby face was horrified to the extent that there was no trace of blood. After a while, Shijing, with a gloomy expression on his face, finally leaned his slightly chubby body against the wall of the carriage, trembling. The grand imperial household was bumping between the rugged and difficult canyons and mountain paths for a long time. It was only after experiencing such a short moment of terrifying horror that the finally suppressed and sorrowful thoughts and conversations finally flew to some corner. In his calm and majestic eyes, there was still the shining Huangfu Xian'e, who had been staring at him with a gloomy expression on his face. He remained silent and respectful, as if he were a cold cicada. As he moved, he raised his hand and patted the huge stove in his arms, pausing word by word and speaking coldly, "When I was old, to say a serious and heartfelt word, we, the helpless orphans of the Southern dynasty, were all survivors of the punishment thanks to the great kindness of the elderly lady. Apart from our poor life, there is nothing else to repay. Even though the road ahead of this trip is full of swords, mountains, fires, and thorns, if our family needs to fight to the death and use our own lives to pave the way, I, Huang Fuxia, will definitely not hesitate and will not hesitate. As for the other causal factors and the right and wrong, for our family, they are simply some irrelevant things that are not within the scope of consideration in consideration of eunuch monks like us who serve as slaves. We just need to do our job well and fulfill our responsibilities. We don't say a word about unnecessary words, don't do anything about unnecessary things, and don't have any extra thoughts. We think we should stop thinking nonsense. When you were old, if you really had that kind of leisure time, why not take advantage of this opportunity to conserve your energy and use leisure time to prepare for unexpected needs?" Seeing Shi Jingniai, who was on the opposite side of the carriage, nodding and silently agreeing, Huang Fuxian, who had nothing else to say, closed his eyes slightly and once again entered the same calm and leisurely state as before. In the hot and steaming carriage, it quickly recovered, amidst the monotonous and piercing, creaking friction sounds between the wheels and axles, the clattering sound of horse hooves, the occasional, beeping sound of charcoal fire, and the unique atmosphere of audible and silent needle drops. At this moment, a few old crows flew here to search for food, as if they were lost in their minds. They were always on the carriages of Huang Fuxia and Shi Jing, who were serving as servants, sometimes hovering low and passing by, sometimes spreading their wings and soaring upwards. If that's all, then that's all. Who would argue with a few flat-haired animals flying to search for food, unless they are really idle and painless? However, what is annoying and disgusting is that these few undead old crows, who have no choice but to live or die, always emit a restless and distressing quack 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 noise from their beaks, whether they are hovering low or spreading their wings. The clamor of an old crow, which is so unsettling and distressing, is like the sound of a soul-seeking and life-chasing demon from the underworld, when it comes to the affairs of Shi Jingniai, who is worried, anxious, and believes in the ways of gods and ghosts. The more I listened, the more I felt restless and agitated. The more I listened, the more I felt that this was the sign of great calamity, Deputy Commander Shi Jing. Finally, I couldn't bear it anymore. But when he saw his furrowed eyebrows, a cold expression on his face, and his two thin and slender knife mouths opening and closing, a burst of eunuch temple people's unique duckling voice spread from the carriage's sedan. "Guoheng, quickly come up with some means to teach these noisy and annoying flat-haired beasts to shut their mouths for our family." Upon hearing these words, Huang Fuxian, despite the depth of the city, could not help but show respect to his elder brother at this moment, saying, "Close their bird mouths for our family." This beautiful and indescribable phrase was casually obtained, and he smiled. However, soon after, this seemingly troubled inner guard Xianhuan also sighed silently as his smile flashed away. It is precisely because of Shi Jingniai's excellent form and spirit that this casual command has been destined. These noisy dead ghosts and crows will not act as undead tragedies to urge their fate. Guoheng, who was summoned by Shi Jingniai, was also a middle-aged man who temporarily served as a carriage driver. As usual, Guoheng, who remained silent, did not open his mouth to accept his promise, but instead used a bird slaughter action that indicated where to go and where to actually use it, demonstrating his decisive behavior. He sat in the position of the driver of the carriage, his face unchanged, without any change in expression. Apart from a slight shake of the whip in his hand, there was no unnecessary movement, not even any. Looking up, he observed the rough flight trajectory and spatial position of these dead ghost crows that he had found dead. However, if you have the heart to observe, you will be surprised to find that Guoheng's two seemingly ordinary ears are gently shaking according to different rhythm patterns at this moment. This should be the rumor in the martial arts world that those top-notch experts are incredibly skilled in listening to sound and distinguishing shadows. But seeing the long whip in Guo Heng's hand, which had been silent for a long time, with the gentle shaking of his wrist, it was like a restless and supernatural dragon. Without a sound, it had already rolled up countless whip rings, whether it was the size, diameter, or rotation axis, which could be said to be completely consistent. The officials and cavalry soldiers around the area were overwhelmed and dazzled. And what they didn't know was that while the long whip rolled up countless whip circles, the invisible internal spiral force attached to the whip circles also silently rolled up 5 or 6 weathered stones of different sizes from the rugged mountain path. Speaking in a flash of lightning, but seeing Guo Heng wielding the whip on his left wrist, he suddenly flicked it upwards. The long whip, which was originally still fluttering and dancing, was like a startled swan soaring into the sky. With a whistling sound, it immediately flew upwards. I could only hear whoosh, 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 a few sharp sounds of broken stones breaking through the air, howling over the convoy of vehicles and horses. In the next moment, a few sounds came from the air. When the gravel hit the flying bird, there were pu, 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 pu sounds, as well as quack 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 sounds. The few dead ghosts and crows died tragically under the flying horizontal stone, the ultimate mournful cry. The convoy of vehicles and horses moving inside the rocky canyon is still moving forward at normal speed and frequency. There was no such unexpected incident, as the first-class expert Guo Heng appeared in front of everyone with his extraordinary martial arts skills, resulting in a noisy scene of cheers and applause. Chapter 3. Pegasus Night with 1 man and 2 horses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Almost everyone who witnessed with their own eyes the extraordinary skill of the expert Guo Heng maintained a silent marching state. However, intentionally or unintentionally, their gaze towards Guo Heng, the internal defense expert, was slightly more. For a skilled expert, they must have the admiration and respect they deserve. Perhaps this is their usual way of recognizing Wang Badeo's martial arts cultivation and violent aesthetics, as well as the officers and soldiers serving in the military, as well as the Royal Guard Eagle Dog's minions responsible for investigation, arrest, seizure, and torture. Let's behave accordingly. This world has finally become completely quiet. Finally, it has returned to the monotonous and boring state it used to be, with bright clouds pressing on top, cold winds howling, horse hooves clattering, wheels creaking, and axles creaking on the vast and desolate land of northern Shaanxi. A small cavalry composed of 2 agile and brave, 1 man and 2 horses, galloped forward in the howling and raging cold wind, carrying the rolling smoke and dust from the sky. It was already galloping on horseback and arrived at the south of Chakou Jindian, only 2 miles away from Jindian, an unknown hill and highland fork road intersection. In addition to the leather helmets worn on their heads, which were made of Jinbiao fur, indicating their 6th-rank official status, the 2 were also covered with butter and a face scarf. They wore the same style of cotton robes and cloaks, wore cowhide boots, hung horizontal swords on their waist, and carried strong crossbows on their backs. In the bow pocket at the saddle, there was also a flying horse knight with a 3-stone hard bow inserted. As they were about to reach the fork in the road, it was as if their hearts were connected, and they almost simultaneously emitted a clear and loud sound of controlling the horse. Sigh. With these 2 standard sounds of cavalry controlling their horses, the 2 knights sitting steadily on the galloping horses made simultaneous movements of dropping their stirrups, pulling the reins, lifting their saddles, and leaning their bodies back. A series of highly standardized horse riding and control techniques, under the dazzling and exquisite skills of these 2 young Pegasus knights, are controlled like flowing clouds and water, effortlessly and seamlessly. With 4 galloping horses, due to emergency deceleration, several front hooves were raised high like a person standing, and at the same time, a few sounds of sparse were made, creating a passionate and high-pitched roar. It can be said that in a blink of an eye, 2 young knights who had completely controlled the speed of their horses, lightly tapped the belly of their horses under their crotch, followed the winding and undulating official road post road, and walked slowly towards the fork town, about 2 miles away from them, located between 2 mountains and 1 river. The courtyard houses were scattered and the terrain was uneven, with a north-south official post road running through the fork town. Just under this extreme gaze, what caught the eyes of the 2 Pegasus knights was nothing more than a grey town and a grey sky. In the howling cold wind, shivering withered trees and fallen leaves, and endless barren mountains, the only place, with a slightly different bright color, is nothing more than the winding small river Xiaqingshui. At the foot of the bald mountain that runs southeast along Chakou town Dian. Speaking of it as a winding small river, but the reality is due to the cold weather and frozen water flow, the small clear water, which had already frozen into a solid and curly ice block, gave the eyes a desolate and bleak color, smeared with a slightly strange taste of blue and white. However, that's all. Because, whether it is the small clear water with frozen water flow, or the rugged riverbank wasteland on both sides of the small clear water, there is still a desolate and bare area. Looking into the grey and desolate fork town from afar, apart from the official road that runs through the north and south, there are only clusters of green smoke and cold mist that still remain to this day since passing through the capital city of Taiyuan in Bingzhou, Hedong province, and embarking on his first trip to the north of Shaanxi. He couldn't bear it anymore. The desolate and bitter cold in his eyes, the young round-faced knight who had suffered double damage to his vision and psychology, could no longer suppress it. At this moment, the wild and violent emotions in his heart finally erupted completely. He casually pulled off the burlap veil that covered his face, revealing it. Due to being coated with butter and grease, it appeared to be a shiny round face, and with a soft, schwa sound, the torn burlap veil, which had already turned into a ball of rotten ice, was thrown straight by him onto the gravel ground by the roadside. Then, this scumbag glared at his 2 eyes, which were already in the shape of cow eggs and were bloodshot and red, and towards the direction of the fork in the mountain below. With a "bah" sound, he spat fiercely, not knowing how much butter was mixed with saliva foam. Then, a series of dirty, vulgar insults and insults erupted, as if spitting out mist from his oily mouth. The dirty place of the straight mother thief. Since passing through the city of Taiyuan on Hedong Road, from morning till night, as long as I open my eyes and see everything is like this. Even those thieves and birds, dogs, boars, chickens, dolphins, pigs, sheep, cows, and horses are so damn useless that I don't want to take another look at them. It's not that grey sky, bare mountains, disorganized villages, or lifeless towns, it's this kind of damn weather that almost freezes out my egg yolks. Damn it. I've been rushing for several days now, not to mention some decent cities and towns, even a family of Gulan tile shops that I can't even look at, I haven't been able to find them. It's really frustrating. Along with the round-faced knight who was shouting and cursing, and the tall knight who was walking side by side, they took advantage of their own brothers who were shouting and cursing on the street over there, and also reached out to untie the silk cotton face scarf that was covering their faces. Please pay attention, please pay attention, please pay attention. Say important words 3 times in a row. The face-covering scarf under this struggle is not an ordinary linen scarf, but a high-quality, warm and smooth silk cotton scarf. However, he did not have the slightest intention of using practical actions to go along with his own brothers, and also slammed the handkerchief in his hand onto the ground of the slurry stone. But instead, he casually brushed away the frost, snow, and ice that had condensed on the face towel, and then carefully folded the already hard and wrinkled silk cotton face towel, which was already frozen. He then slipped it into his sleeve. Subsequently, he aimed at his large hands, which had already been frozen red and stiff, took several puffs of hot air and quickly rubbed them a few times to relieve the pricking sensation on his fingers. At the same time, he let the mount under his crotch walk along the rugged mountain road, clattering, confidently. As the head of the family of the 6 sons, he is well aware of this annoying temper, and he also knows that the 6 sons have been in a restless and unhappy state of mind and emotions in recent days. Therefore, during the entire process of the round-faced six-sun knight's emotional outburst, anger, and scolding, the tall knight who didn't take it seriously even gave a cheap smile to the six-sun brothers, who said, "Golan wasi, which can make me look at it." This boring and brainless reason for complaining was rewarded with a vulgar smile full of similar tastes and collusion. Until he felt that his six brothers, who used vulgar and abusive language to vent their grievances and anger, seemed to have reached the point where their talents were exhausted and their skills were exhausted, he smiled and cursed and stopped, saying, I said you're such a boring little six, you're really a stuffed bun. You guys are already there, howling in the face of this gray sky and bare mountain, with the scene of a cup of tea and a meal. Seeing all the bulls and bulls stored in your grassy belly, you have already been messed up by you. How dare you still have a stinky face in front of your second brother, like a rabid dog barking at the sun, endlessly staring at this uninhabited wilderness. You are also a person of all ages, why don't you know how to keep a mouthful of heating for yourself in such a cold weather? Alright, let's just say a few silly things. Don't be like a damn, talkative street shrew. As long as you start, it's just endless chatter and chatter. Hurry up. I don't know if you and my brothers still have a serious 800 job to do. Damn it, you're really being pretentious. Kid, don't say anything more. Second brother, I didn't warn you in advance. Before the secret mission of our mission can be successfully delivered, you should stop thinking about why the lights are red, wine is green, and the birds sing and the swallows dance so beautifully. If this breaks the rules of their internal security office and delays. Inexplicably facing this scene, in the desolate land of impoverished mountains and rivers, he vented his resentment and anger in boredom. In addition, after being scolded and laughed at by his own second brother, the mood and emotions of the round-faced six-sun knight inexplicably improved. From this, one can imagine how unruly and powerful this guy should be, with his mischievous and despicable, innate talent. As for what second brother said, warning language such as, "What should you stop thinking about before the secret mission of our trip is successfully completed, and why should the colorful lights, wine, singing, and dancing of birds and swallows be so beautiful?" If this breaks the rules of their internal security office and delays, was simply ignored by this casual guy as some unpleasant excretory gas. He chuckled and responded to his second brother's insults, while also driving his mount to catch up with the pace of his brother's ride. He didn't forget to use his whip in his hand, and with lightning speed, he gave the mixed fur and colored military horse behind him, which was tied to the leather bridle of his saddle, a fierce blow on the head. Chapter 4. 2 brothers and 6 brothers with the same bone and flesh. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There is nothing else. Just because of this extremely ugly mixed fur and leprosy beast, on their way to the fork in the road to Xinjiang, there is not only a problem of not working and not putting in any effort, but also, if there is time to steal food, this mixed fur and leprosy bastard will sneak its ugly and despicable mouth into the horse bag used by the Six Sons Knight to feed his own vehicle, chew on a few high-quality bean cake dressings, and enjoy it beautifully. For this impure fur and mangy beast, who is both detestable and unattractive, and also has a somewhat sneaky style of behavior, the Six Sons Knight, who was already on the verge of biting the teeth in his mouth and harboring evil towards the edge of his courage, was hesitant due to the rule that the marching soldiers of the Tang Empire need to treat their horses well. He could not teach this exhausted and mischievous impure fur beast a beautiful lesson in the first place. Well, not long ago, while the round-faced Six Sons Knight was raging and cursing incessantly at the sky, earth, mountains, water, villages, and towns of northern Shaanxi, this lazy miscellaneous furry beast once again broke its hateful and filthy mouth, sneaking towards the horse bag containing high-quality horse feed. How dare you? Still coming. What a coward he is. It is tolerable, which one cannot tolerate it. I'll beat you to death, you mischievous and tiresome bastard grandson. You bastard who remembers to eat or fight. If you dare to steal your Han Laozi again and carefully prepare horse feed for my BMW, Red Bean, I will definitely peel off your lazy turtle grandson's extremely ugly horsehair, skin, mane, and tail. Angers. Slippery and slippery. Just as the 6 Sun Knights, with their fierce and murderous eyes, were using extremely cruel and malicious vulgar language in the market, they angrily scolded and cursed the horse behind them. Because of its huge horse face, it was suddenly hit by a sudden whip, causing a sudden pain, while the exhausted and furry beasts were howling and wailing uncontrollably. Suddenly, the second brother knight sounded in front of them, some inexplicably, and even hysterical laughter. Ah! Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! This is really making me laugh. Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! For a moment, some of the 6 knights, who were as confused as the genre monk, were feeling confused and strange about it. However, the despicable second brother blurted out a few sharp and sarcastic words of ridicule, which immediately made this unreserved guy feel a sense of astonishment and embarrassment. Ha ha ha, brother 6, these few words of insulting from me that I dare to say are really wonderful. Ha ha. Ha ha. Ha ha. Look at what you mean. This miscellaneous-haired military horse, carefully prepared by Sanyuan Station for you, I dare say it's your own child, raised by yourself. Ha ha ha. Brother Yu, I have another heartless request. I hope Brother 6 can help you clarify your doubts and provide guidance. Before waiting for the round-faced 6th Sun Knight, he blew his beard and glared, gritted his teeth and made a retaliatory gesture. He laughed so hard that his second brother knight, who was swaying on his horse's back, burst out laughing and said in a snatched voice, "Ha ha. Ha ha. I dare ask where your illegitimate son's command is now. I wonder how beautiful he is. How old is he? Ha ha. Ah. Oh. Ah." The 6 brothers, who were stuttering and shameless, suddenly developed a ridiculous idea of trying to bring this sharp, sarcastic guy to justice. A mouthful of nonsense. Just talk nonsense. Hurry up with me, close your bird's beak. If you dare to spread rumors and gossip about today's matter to our brothers' circles in the Yamen, believe it or not, we will immediately punish you, a crude and shameless person, in Kujianjuan, that super large muddy pond. Lead the way. Get out of here now. Do you dare not obey me, brother? Ha ha ha. The 2 brothers, who were joking, and cursing, walked freely and confidently. About 100 zhang away I only had to feel the cold wind of the barren mountains and remote areas of northern Shaanxi again, the constant and ubiquitous poison raging everywhere, and the round-faced 6 Suns Knight after being cut to the bone with a knife. It was then that I remembered something that was crucial for him. That's because of this guy's resentment, anger, and impulsive behavior. With blood burning in his head and a momentary impulse, he even treated the linen face scarf used to cover up the wind and sand, to keep warm from the cold, as the object of his anger. When he abandoned it like a bare shoe, it was a very decisive and joyful decision. The current distance of 1 or 2 miles is not much, and it is indeed not useful. Such an ordinary piece of junk is just, but when you think about yourself today, at least there are still dozens of miles of mountain roads to travel back, and for a considerable period of time in the future, thousands of miles of arduous journey in the cold north. I'm afraid there will be no shortage of these seemingly inconspicuous face masks to shield yourself from the cold and block the wind and sand on his numb and stiff face. The 6 knights, who had gradually felt the sensation of cutting and needling with knives, instinctively turned his head and looked towards the fork in the road where he had stopped his horse and started cursing on the street not long ago. His face couldn't help but show a hint of contemplation. However, this arrogant and shameless guy, no matter what, is determined not to ignore the half-foot square tattered linen face scarf. As a high-ranking official in the government office, he puts down his body and willingly falls. He runs back to the intersection where he just went berserk and cursed, picking up the tattered face scarf that was abandoned as a humble shoe and picking it up again. Do you want to give up the shameless face of the aristocratic and wealthy families of the Tang Empire, as well as the dandy and sorghum children in the government office. As his second brother knight and the most intimate confidant in private relationships, the sixth son knight is well aware of this. However, if he were Han Ying, Han Zhuohua, the sixth brother of the Han family, and any necessary equipment during this trip, there would be no way to praise his second brother Wu and not prepare him properly. Moreover, when the sixth prince knight was just raging and cursing, what he threw away was only a half-foot square, not worth the tattered face scarf of those 3 melons and 2 dates. Even if there are no extra linen towels in Zanwu's horse bag, as long as this young master has a large number of Kaiyuan copper coins and small silver ingots in his hand, we don't believe it. At the fork in front of Xindian, we can't buy a face scarf that is enough to keep warm and shelter from wind and sand. As long as it is sold in this town, even if you buy a cart full of silk towels, it is just a trivial matter. A wealthy and powerful playboy in the Yamen, a son of a sorghum, should have acted in such a bold and domineering manner. The reason why Han Ying, the sixth son of the Han family, had such a look on his face was precisely because of the numerous and effective measures he took on Zanwu's journey north, which inevitably led to a complex psychological reaction. Yes. It's the kind of psychological reaction that ferments when emotions unique to humans, such as admiration, joy, sourness, bitterness, envy, jealousy, emptiness, loneliness, and coldness, are mixed together. The literal meanings of sigh, admire, respect, joy, envy, and jealousy are relatively easy to understand. We will not provide further verbal explanations here. Our task of explaining words focuses on sourness, bitterness, hatred, and emptiness, loneliness, and coldness. The so-called sourness refers to the fox's mentality of speaking out for the sour taste of grapes when they cannot be eaten. The so-called bitterness refers to the sour taste, which is only a slight bitter taste when chewed dry until the end. Angry and resentful, either stubborn and arrogant, or frustrated and resentful, or frustrated and resentful after stubborn and arrogant. The so-called hatred here in Han Xiaoyou's family, except for a moment when it was a genuine resentment towards his martial arts brother who praised him, the vast majority of it should be a regret towards himself for not being able to stick to his own views and stubbornly hold on to his own wishes back then. As for the last sentence, emptiness, loneliness, and coldness, it can only be haha. Haha. Haha, they are all descendants of noble families and aristocratic families, whether they are the extravagant playboys in the government office, the lazy and extravagant sons waiting to die, the wandering nobles who sleep in flowers and willows, or the charming young gentleman. He is still a powerful husband of a tiger, a fearsome young man, a young hero who has just shown his talents, and a young and promising young talent regardless of whether they should be so conscious and voluntary in their hearts, or unwilling to force themselves to Liangshan. However, under the guidance and discipline of various aristocratic families, including their ancestors, heads of households, and young masters, who have never undergone any changes for hundreds of years, such as the use of whip and family laws, fists, feet, sticks, fasting, and other violent or cold violence methods, almost all the Yamen dandies, Kaoyang children, young talents, and young heroes in the mansion, who are unwilling to part ways, chatter incessantly, and even instinctively and hysterically indoctrinate themselves with debauchery, use various techniques for marching in the army and fighting in the military. It can be said that it is well known, as precious as a few words, boasting and talking on paper. Moreover, one can draw on the military tactics and strategies of various dynasties, citing classics and extensive references, to narrate the scene of several hours in a vivid and endless manner, with lively expressions and eloquent expressions. But for example, tightly wrapping a half-square burlap face towel around oneself, covering one's head and face with animal fat, leaving only enough holes and openings in the eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and other areas to observe, smell, breathe, and exhale, in order to resist and prevent the invasion and damage of wind, sand, cold, and other tight areas on one's head and face. Place your hands inside the specially sewn cowhide leather bags on both sides of the saddle, using the thick leather bags. And the horse's body temperature to keep your hands warm and warm, take some inconspicuous, already dried and sun-dried fine and soft hay, and fill all the gaps in their cowhide war boots tightly to ensure that their feet are always in a mild and dry state. Chapter 5. The Startling Han Family's Little Six. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Why are there such techniques for keeping warm and preventing freezing? Apart from my own brother Zanwu, no one can understand these seemingly simple and crude methods that are rarely seen in various written records, whether it's the officials of the Imperial Guard, the officials of the Imperial Office, the officials of the Left Qianyo Guard, the brothers of the Left Qianyo Guard, or even my own commanding officer, Chiu Peng, the commanding captain of the Left Qianyo Guard. Can you say, is this the experience and insights that Zanwu, the second brother who has truly experienced the harsh and cold terrain of the southwestern border plateau, witnessed military battles and bloody battles, and learned from the real battlefield and military formations of the Dead Mountains and Blood Seas, swords and arrows? But as soon as he thought of these, it could be said that it was an iron-blooded and humorous story that made his blood boil, passion overflowed, and he was eager to try. At that moment, the six brothers, who had just been a bit bored and lacking in enthusiasm, immediately developed an excited and passionate feeling. In the eyes that looked at the back of brother Zanwu, there was also a shining, scorching thief light. Ha! 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 As expected, it fulfilled the cliché saying, "It's better to come at the right time than to come at the right time." Since I have already fully understood the reasons and causes behind it, why not take advantage of this rare opportunity to praise Brother Wu and gather some old military news and stories from this soft and hard guy who doesn't eat and has a hard head like iron, like a cast iron mouth. So, in the dark, there was already someone who was calculating and calculating. He drove his mount under his crotch, accelerated his horse speed, and soon arrived at Zanwu's side. Han Ying, the sixth prince with a mischievous mind, carefully controlled the speed of Red Bean's horse, always maintaining it. He and his second brother's BMW rode only half a step back and forth, and walked slowly like that for a while. At the same time, the scheming young man who seeks to be fickle is also striving to adjust his voice, appearance, and smile, pondering his own language and speech. In the next moment, the transformed Liu Lang Han Ying, like a playful bab wagging its tail to seek pleasure, accompanied by an extremely flattering smiling face. With a sharp and humble eyebrow, he probed and said, "Hee hee. Hee hee. Second brother, hee hee, you see that you have already covered your face with a burlap scarf, a good way to resist the cold and prevent wind and sand from hitting your face. Tell those in the original text, word for word. The Imperial Guards, including the Imperial officials and the Eagle Dog Claws, know about it, but..." Sigh. That one. Two of them, pulling like their farts up to the sky, actually ignore the method that works for you, second brother. These unscrupulous little rascals would rather have their dirty and filthy faces frozen like frosted donkey dung and eggs, dirty and shabby, than learn from the demeanor of our Left Qianyo Guard robe brothers. They would have covered their black donkey dung and eggs with the linen towels you had prepared with them. Ha ha. Really, you're going to laugh to death. Ha. Second brother, haven't you been in close contact with the eunuch with their surname, he, frequently in the past few days? That guy with the surname, he, didn't tell you, why treat themselves so harshly like those eunuch hammers who have lost their eggs and don't have any brains in their inner guards? What exactly does this mean? I thought I had a deep personal relationship and a very close relationship with him. It can almost be said that Zanwu, the second brother, talks about everything. Even if he is stubborn, he will still give himself a slight discount when only his own brothers are present and alone. He will follow the topics and ideas he deliberately guides, go downstairs and down the slope, and continue on. In a constant stream of mockery and sarcastic remarks, he opened his box of conversation, and then naturally, it was a fluent and endless piece anyway. This time around, I really put on a serious and obsequious act, like my third grandson who flatters me unexpectedly, for the 6 sons of the Han family, the issue of having ulterior motives, and having ulterior motives, seemed to have been thoroughly investigated and fully prepared by the thieves in their cunning schemes. On top of that annoying handsome face, Zanwu's second brother appeared as Huang Daxian bidding New Year to the little rooster Zanwu heir, with a smile on his face but not a smile on his face, quietly looked at Liu Lang Han Ying. After a long time, he finally gave Liu Lang Xiao a simple and concise two-word answer. No. Liu Lang, who was filled with hope and anticipation in his heart, almost choked on his breath before his second brother could even reverse his two breaths. On the desolate and vast ancient road, a burst of coughing sound immediately sounded, like a heart-wrenching cough. Cough, cough, cough. Cough, cough, cough. The coughing sound and movements were so intense and rapid that this guy, his beloved mount, Red Bean, couldn't help but turn its horse head sideways. The two spiritual and huge horse eyes were full of anxiety and inquiry. Take a break. This. His uncle's. Is also okay. Old. Bah. In the marching army of the left Xianyo Guard, this messy big dying vat has been struggling for years, and almost all of the young Liu Lang has grown into a complete veteran Yuzi and Qiuba military ruffian. After almost having the experience of military battles and bloody battles, one will completely transform into a careless and vulgar killing rod. Therefore, this reckless rascal, in a fit of urgency, coughed and pronounced the standard self-proclaimed phrase in the army, lousy. With just a few words missing, he would blurt it out from his broken mouth, which was accustomed to causing trouble. Fortunately, this generous young man had some discerning ability. At the moment when disaster came out of his mouth and was about to come, he finally completed a timely and perilous self-redemption. If it were lousy, it could be said that it is a standard self-title in the military, note. Only limited to official positions, ranks, or between veterans with similar, and identical status, such as Yuzi and Qiuba soldiers and ruffians, or when they are facing each other, they can use this self-title. If it is truly audacious and daring to claim it in front of their own officials, then the ultimate outcome will be to seek blessings on their own. If it were really blurted out from his mouth, it would be like Liang Zanwu, the second brother of the Liang family, who can solve problems with hands-on methods, then it would be absolutely a case of seeking blessings. He is a skilled boxer who doesn't know how to move his mouth. He is determined to beat and crush Han Xiaolu into a huge pig head that even his own parents can't recognize. Moreover, it was the kind of person who, after being beaten up, had to hold his tail, accompany his smiling face, and put on a respectful and obedient third grandson-like demeanor, in the hope of praising Brother Wu. He was able to forgive his own wrongdoing and not report his wrongdoing to his parents and sons. Just being unfilial and disrespectful to ancestors is enough for this small body to drink a pot of it. The young man Liu Lang, who was trembling with fear, suddenly triggered the lung meridian that had not yet been calmed down. For a moment, the heart-wrenching and coughing sound echoed once again in the desolate mountains and official roads. Cough cough. Cough cough. A certain family racked their brains, pondered, and carefully crafted this. No matter how they looked at it, it was also a topic that could not be easily discussed with Zanwu, the second brother of the Liang family, about his old military experience in the Longyu army. Why did this give rise to a feeling that his cunning plan had long been insightful and discerning by the second brother of the Liang family? Is it difficult? Have you really seen a ghost? Just as the six-child knight, with a stunned and devilish expression on his face, was restless and lost in thought, he heard a cold snort from his nostrils as he praised Brother Wu. The threat and intimidation in it is even more intense. What's going on? Does it not meet your expectations? And dared to challenge his six brothers, who were at the forefront, and immediately shook his round head like a large tambourine, like a popping bean, with a voice of refutation and negation. Almost at the same time, it erupted from his mouth. No, 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 no. Unexpectedly, at the beginning of his journey, he was in front of the second brother Zanwu, who seemed to have divine assistance. The six brothers, who had suffered from a minor setback, were they the kind of soft-footed shrimp and three-legged cat who would give up easily when faced with setbacks? Anyway, we Han Jiao Lang, Han Ying, and Han Zhuohua must also be a brave and tough character who bravely faces challenges and challenges. So, the 6 brothers who worked hard to maintain their smiling face, this time chose to get straight to the point. Hee hee. Hee hee, second brother. Although you have instructed our brothers in robes to adopt various measures to keep warm and prevent freezing, we cannot find any corresponding sources or references, nor have we transcribed them from historical books, allusions, military tactics, and strategies. However, although I am not talented, I dare to speculate in front of you, second brother. Hee hee. Hee hee, methods and measures such as covering your face with a scarf, warming your hands with leather bags, and filling your boots with silk grass, must be second brother. You served as a military officer in the left guard army of Long Yu back then. When it comes to learning, let's observe and explore carefully, and gain the experience and insights we have gained. Hee hee. Hee hee, here are only the 2 of us brothers, and there is no one else. Anyway, we have nothing to do. It's just a casual chat between us brothers to relieve the stress. Second brother, tell your brother about the interesting stories and stories you heard and saw when you were in the Long Yu army and left guard army back then. Chapter 6. The Shame and Anger of Liu Lang Han Ying. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sincerity and hope are full, and expectations are also full. In the tone and tone of their speech, there is a hint of flattery in the 6 brothers. However, what they never expected was that they had put in so much effort, even themselves, even myself, who had already been disgusted by my words and actions, in exchange for unexpectedly, it was the despicable and sarcastic face of the second son of the Liang family, as well as the 2-word motto coldly squeezed out from between his teeth, which made the Han family's 6th son feel even more ashamed and angry. Dreaming. His uncle is a deadbeat. The thief and bird man of the balloon. This clearly shows the rhythm of being slapped in public by his second son from the Liang family. Seeing that although it was a last-minute initiative, it was still a thoughtful and self-satisfied move, and it turned out that it was not Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family. With a 2-word truth of dreaming, he was the enemy of his subordinates. At the beginning of the opening, I was exposed by Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, who was like chopping melons and vegetables, crispy and crisp, with a cracking sound. The slap on the face was a slap sound, without any hesitation. The face of this Han family's 6th prince. I have always been arrogant, and I am used to it. What is more, I am a dandy in the government who insists on saving face and suffering. I am angry. However, for some self-aware young men like Liu Lang, it is still a matter of debate and careful consideration how to express the serious consequences of being ashamed and angry with a better gentlemanly demeanor. At this moment, the second son of the Liang family, Liang Zanwu, came back with sarcastic and mocking remarks. Thinking of you, Han Xiaolu, is already a shameless and boastful young man and a playboy officer. In the eyes of those military academies who have experienced the vast desert and sea, the bitter cold on the border, military battles, and the rain of guns and arrows for a long time, he is even a useless local chicken, novice, and cannon fodder. How could he have the courage to speak confidently in front of a certain family? What are the corresponding sources and references? Why is it a reference to military strategy throughout history? You should know that when a certain family was in the left guard army camp on Long Yu Road. On the first day of junior high school, I heard that my head of the family and the second son of the Liang family had an evaluation of me, which turned out to be just a boastful and shameless young man, a playboy officer, and a useless local chicken, newbie, and cannon fodder. Liu Lang, who was already angry and embarrassed, was so angry that he could no longer care about anything. His strength was not at all strong, and the embarrassing situation of daring to act recklessly was about to erupt completely. At this critical moment, Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, changed his tone and coincidentally shifted the topic of humiliating himself too much to the old affairs of the Long Yu army, which he had been pondering and longing for day and night. This also made Han Ying, the sixth son of the Liang family, who was already planning to have a fierce and fight to the death with him, immediately extinguish his anger. The bare anger that had no choice but to burst into his ears and listen carefully. He, in situations where we don't have to fight to the death, it's best to prioritize peace. Who the hell would use the precious pearls and jade from their own family to have a fight with Liang Zanwu's tattered urinal, knowing that it would be unlucky? When my left guard army marched out to Songzhou, Minzhou, Taozhou, and other areas to quell the border troubles and wars on the southwest border, and to suppress the rebellious tribes, the high mountain canyons and remote cold areas where the camp was stationed were not only unique to the Plateau Mountains, but also impossible to prevent and treat with medicine and stones. Another challenge faced by tens of thousands of soldiers throughout the army was how to resist severe cold and prevent frostbite. Among them, especially our General Xuenne, who was then serving as the Left Army's 2nd and 3rd Battalions, was the most serious. Due to the geographical location of our Left Army's 2nd and 3rd Battalions, totaling more than 4,000 officers and soldiers, which were too special and forward-facing, frostbite incidents have been caused one after another, and can be said to be numerous. Chilblains and frostbite, such as those on the head, face, mouth, nose, hands, feet, and limbs, are just ordinary things. Even scouts, spies, and the noses, ears, fingers, and toes of security guards are often affected by unexpected and sudden gusts of strong winds, blizzards, icy cold, severe frostbite, and even the tragic scene of directly freezing. What's even worse is that those soldiers who suffer from severe frostbite that cannot be treated and have to cut off their hands, feet, and limbs under the premise of saving their lives, resulting in casualties and disabilities. The scene of howling repeatedly makes a certain family suddenly feel a shocking and heartbroken feeling, and they have to look up to the sky and sigh helplessly. Under duress, General Xuenne finally gathered together the experienced soldiers from the 2 battalions under his command. The big guys brainstormed together to come up with effective strategies for keeping warm and preventing the cold, such as covering the face with fur, warming hands with leather bags, and filling boots with silk and grass. At this point it was already the tragic past of the left guard in Longyu that touched the wounded Qianyo Beishan Liang Zanwu in the depths of his heart, as if he had transformed into a different person. The face between his eyebrows and eyes looked very grim and terrifying. He forcefully pulled the reins of the horse and immediately turned the head of the beloved horse under his crotch. Then, he glared angrily at Liu Lang Han Ying, with a cold and murderous expression emanating from his 2 stern eyes. "Kid. You must not look at and measure with the eyes of the officials in the capital's Chang'an Yamen, such as the playboys and the sons of the sorghum, the guards of the feathered forest guard and the left Qianyo guard. Those Tang dynasty soldiers who have gone through years of hardships, climbed ice and lay in snow, defended and fought on the border plateau and the northern frontier, have the food, supplies, and logistical equipment they can obtain to supply supplies. The same thick linen face scarf measuring half a foot in square, in Luoyang and Chang'an, the magnificent eastern and western capitals, in Yangzhou, Yizhou, Quanzhou, and Guangzhou, the prosperous Tongdu-dei, in the eyes of wealthy officials and young masters like you, it is nothing but a tiny item that is not worth a penny. In the eyes of the border soldiers' robes who stand guard day after day, year after year, in the remote and cold regions, it is a rare and unattainable item for keeping warm and even for their lives. You should know that only the transportation of grain for thousands of miles is damaged. Even in the Jiangnan region where rivers crisscross and water networks are dense, 10% of the supply of supplies is likely to be lost by 80% when it reaches its destination. Moreover, it is the southwestern border plateau and mountainous areas with high mountains, dense forests, steep slopes, and dangerous roads. Kid. What a certain family is talking about here is only some daily necessities such as wheat, rice, and millet, as well as barley and millet, which are common food in the north. However, when you think of the difficulties of our Tang dynasty border army's food and supplies, let alone the production and supply of goods and materials such as linen and silk. Only the prosperous central plains of Hunan, Izhou Tianfu, and the fertile land of Jiangnan's misty rain can produce and supply these goods and materials. Even if you're a kid with a massive amount of gold, silver, jewelry, copper coins, and silk in your hands, you can't afford them in those barbaric and barren border states of Longyu Road. It's enough for me, more than 4,000 people, the iron-blooded tigers of the Tang dynasty's left guard, to have the necessary goods and materials such as cotton, linen, and silk to keep warm and prevent freezing. Moreover, even if you are a young man named Liu Lang and a wealthy tycoon with a huge amount of money and wealth, a certain family has never heard of it before. Which military commander or actual military academy in that family dares to use their private property and wealth to supply and equip our Tang dynasty military mansion with tens of thousands of soldiers fighting outside? Inviting people, plotting ill, offending the heavens, and rebelling against the dragon scales is a safe and treacherous act. It is a way to take one's life and commit suicide. For this reason, General Xuan had to adopt a compromise method of exchanging food for goods, exchanging a large amount of cattle, sheep, camels, and horses' fur from local herdsmen. This was the only way to solve the difficult problem of the left army's 2nd and 3rd battalions, totaling more than 4,000 brothers in robes, to keep warm and prevent frostbite. However, those untreated animal fur, covered in tents and camps, emitted a foul odor, which became the biggest nightmare for more than 4,000 brothers in the robe who rested, slept, and had meals before and after each day. Over time, countless brothers in the robe had become filthy, smelly, and indistinguishable frontier savages. It was not until half a year later that Duke Pei, being a frugal general, collected enough usable and pre-processed animal fur for tens of thousands of soldiers in the left guard army. Only then did this difficult situation be completely changed. A rational, passionate, yet helpless, and tragic preaching speech came to this, and when it came to this, Liang Zanwu, the Qianyo Bei body with an unbearable expression on his face, gave a cold glance. His face was already full of embarrassment. At this moment, Liu Lang, who was lost in thought, said with a hint of mockery and ridicule, "Kid, I'll teach you how to be good." The military strategy of various dynasties, whether it is the 6 Tao, Sun Tzu, Wu Zi, Wei Liao Zi, and Sima Fa, from the pre-Qin period, or the 3 strategies, and Meng de Xian Shu written by the Qin emperor after unifying the 6 states, as well as the military strategy masterpieces 6 Army Mirrors, Yin Fu Ji, Yu Zhang Jing Jing, Ba Guo Zhen, and Wei Gong Shou Ji written by Li Jing, a famous general in the early years of the Zhongguan period, which dealt with weapons and supplies, grain and supplies, military horses and livestock, and supplies. There are few written records related to the guarantee of material supply. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. Qi Shami Alsos Liang family's second brother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Especially the series of military books and strategies written by the Grand Marshal of Wei in our country's court. Although it has been several decades since they were written, to this day, they are still kept in secret by the inner treasury of the Central Secretariat, the Hongwen Hall of the Lower Secretariat, the Chongwen Hall of the Crown Prince's Eastern Palace, and the National History Record Institute of the Secretariat. A high-ranking official who is not a member of the 3 provinces and 6 ministries, or a member of the military government, who is not a cardinal of the court, will not easily reveal the verification documents issued by others. Looking at Liu Lang Han Ying's face, which was twisted and ignorant, it appeared to be a silly, ignorant, and confused face. With a look of hatred and anger, Qianyo Bei, Liang Zanwu, scolded angrily, saying, "You are already an ignorant and inexperienced playboy. Why bother boasting in this dangerous military formation? Although your Han Xiaoyou's original intention was to show off well in front of a certain family, your own experience, skills, and insights. Who would have expected that this carelessness would openly reveal your child, such an ignorant and fearless side, which is truly pitiful and ridiculous. Wow It's really embarrassing and frustrating. Unexpectedly, while bowing down and listening attentively, Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, shamelessly labeled himself as a pitiful and ridiculous, ignorant and fearless sorghum playboy. With a mixture of shame and anger, the flesh on his face, which was filled with bumps, couldn't help but be angered by Liang's behavior. The trembling Liu Lang Han Ying endured for a while, and finally, under the strong desire to learn without getting tired, he forcefully suppressed it. I am about to sneer at the thought of turning my lips. Kid, this military strategy and tactics of all dynasties, especially the military books that were only written after Qin Emperor unified the country, were favored by the founding monarchs of all dynasties and were widely used in the early days of building temples and establishing the country, as they were the primary needs of military warfare to pacify the country and stabilize the political power. However, for the emperors of all dynasties, these brave generals and commanders who are knowledgeable in both military tactics and tactics, as well as in commanding and employing troops, are actually the most feared taboos in their hearts. These brave generals, if they could be firmly controlled by our dynasty, His Majesty Emperor Taizong, who is known for his literary and military strategies, as well as his wise and divine martial arts. Like the first general of the country, Duke Li of Wei, the old prime minister, they would conquer the Western Turks in the south, conquer the Tuyuhun in the west, and conquer the Eastern Turks in the north. They would also be like the current emperor, who is known for his literary and military skills, benevolent and filial piety. He would drive away safely and confidently, like the invincible General Xing Gong and Su Lao general under his command. He would set out to conquer the Western Turks, pacify the Tsongling Mountains, annihilate Beach, and attack Goryeo. Before and after the Three Kingdoms, he would capture his master alive. For our Tang Empire, it can be said that we have made remarkable military achievements in opening up new territories, cracking down on land, and eliminating the country's feudal lords. When it comes to the past emperor and the current emperor, in his speech, Qian Niu stood up with Liang Zanwu, clasping his fists and bowing his hand, facing south of the capital Chang'an. He respectfully and elegantly bowed to the former emperor of Taizong, as well as to show his respect and admiration for the current emperor. Meanwhile, Han Ying, who was also a loyal and brave warrior of the Tang Empire, eagerly followed suit, respectfully clasping his fists and bowing his hand, giving a distant salute. However, if there were to be, like Wei Wu Chao Chao, who wrote the famous military strategy in the New Book of Mengda, those ambitious and influential figures who could reach all corners of the world would probably be a nightmare that would make the monarchs, nobles, high-ranking officials, aristocrats, and common people feel the most terrifying. Therefore, even if one is wholeheartedly devoted and never forgets, and wants to write and pass down the military formations, tactics, and strategies he has learned throughout his life, as well as the books he has written and passed down for centuries, Li Weigong, the old prime minister, is deeply concerned about slander, fear of ridicule, and deeply moved. Therefore, he has to personally present to His Majesty Emperor Taizong his many famous military strategies, such as the 6 Armies Mirror, Yin Fu Ji, Yu Zhangjing, Ba Guizhen, and Wei Gong Shou Ji, which have been painstakingly and meticulously written for many years, and according to the original intention of the imperial edict written by the late emperor. He is hereby entrusted to the Central Military Academy, the internal treasury of the Ministry of Books, the Hongwen Hall of the Ministry of Personnel, the Chongwen Hall of the Prince's East Palace, and the National History Record Institute of the Ministry of Secretaries are all kept in secret and cannot be disclosed to anyone during their leisure time. It is precisely because of the unique and deceitful characteristics of military strategists that many distinguished generals who specialize in military formation and military tactics, but dare not reveal them in written books, have to adopt the method of oral transmission. They have passed down sensitive content, such as military training, from generation to generation, including our ancestors and ancestors. Back in the days when a certain family first joined the Left Guard army and set foot in Longyu Daosong, Tao, Minzhou, and other high-altitude mountainous areas, they had received more than one earnest teachings and instructions from their grandfather, two uncles, elders of the clan, and uncle of the Han family. However, there was a slight delay in their lazy cliques, and they were often treated with old fists by the irritable third uncle. And our General Xuenne of the left Xianyou Guard has received courtesy and favor from his family's Shui Gong, Shueli Lao general, and the elders of the clan. It seems that he is not under the command of a certain family. A detailed and thorough introduction was given, and it was clearly stated that Liu Lang Han Ying, who was focused on it, had already listened attentively and with great interest. It was only when he was about to prepare and continue to listen attentively unexpectedly, Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, who was a complete scoundrel and lacked moral integrity, turned the conversation around and once again pointed his insidious, sarcastic, contemptuous remarks directly at Han Xiaolu, who had been unjustly victimized and shot lying down. As for you, a young man in the wealthy circles of Chang'an, the capital, enjoying peace and contentment. I saw him squint his eyes and take a glance. Han Ying, the sixth prince who was like a lightning strike, casually threw out a contemptuous sentence. Although the harm was not significant, in terms of insult, it was an extremely strong contemptuous remark. Then, the servant rudely lifted the corner of his right mouth, revealing a look of unworthiness on his face, and then there was nothing more. He cough up a humph. It's really frustrating. Liang Zanwu, this guy, is really a thief and bird man with a ball bag. Old. Cough up I, Han Ying and Han Zhuohua, am I a wealthy and prosperous young man, a proud and upright young man, a true man, or some other scoundrel or rascal, but it's related to your second son of the Liang family, Liang Zanwu, a petty person who goes crazy when he gets his way. He's a dirty bastard and has a connection with a ball of hair. Just as the shy and angry young man Liu Lang, who had been holding back all his anger, had nowhere to go, felt like he was not being dealt with anywhere. Despite appearing angry and impatient, the Liang family's Erlang had already laughed in his heart, like a dog-tail flower. In fact, Liang Zanwu originally intended to take advantage of this rare opportunity to explain to his 6 sons and brothers the knowledge and experiences he had heard, learned, or speculated about from General Xuenne, as well as the various strange things that triggered his strong vigilance along the way. However, as soon as he calmed down and carefully considered Liu Lang Han Ying, his well-known big mouth, as well as this kid, those fox friends who didn't do anything serious and constantly broke things, just like a pack of wolves and dogs, and their lawless and reckless urination and behavior, he immediately dispelled this idea, which is highly likely to harm others. Just now, in the midst of intense emotions, I accidentally blurted out a series of words and phrases, among which there were too many, involving sensitive topics such as measuring suspicion and political intricacies of emperors and kings throughout history. If such a sensitive topic only involves the 2 brothers, even Liu Lang Han Ying, who has always liked to compete with others in terms of words and phrases, accidentally leaked the information and leaked out the content of the conversation between the 2 brothers today. But with their private friendship with the current emperor and empress, as well as the heads and mothers of the Liang and Han families, even if it were to expose the heavens and offend the heavens, they were just 2 young and inexperienced younger generation children, like wild dogs barking at the sun, pretending to be disrespectful. A simple family order is enough to handle small matters. If a meal of family law is not enough to handle it, it's no big deal to have another meal of family law treatment. However, if it is true that this matter is also implicated with General Xuenne, then I'm afraid it will be a heinous disaster born out of nothing. As the commander of the left Xianyou Guard, Xuanexu Xinyan, and a loyal supporter of the Liang family, Liang Zanwu, how could he immerse his admired and worshipped Shangguan general in the midst of a catastrophic disaster? Liang Erlang, who was spinning his horse's head and preparing to drive it on his way, was still secretly pondering over his worries. As if suddenly remembering something important, he stopped pulling his horse. He turned his head and looked at Han Ying, who had a shy and angry expression on his face. With a hint of embarrassment, he smiled and mocked, "Hee, kid, I'll sell you another good deal. Don't you really want to know, second brother, what exactly am I? It's like being a prophet, understanding clearly what your little boy is thinking about, those dirty schemes in his heart." Chapter 8. Liu Lang Han Ying, who harbors a cunning mind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Han Xiaolu, who was feeling alone and stuffy there, immediately tapped his head like a garlic hammer when pounding garlic. The eyes full of shame and anger couldn't help but brighten. Since Liang Zanwu had already seen through his own thoughts and schemes at the beginning of his speech, and for this, he had also gained this ungrateful guy, a long and thorough rebuke and humiliation since this scumbag still has this kind of leisure mood now. If he wants to clarify with himself the shortcomings or flaws in his speech and actions, then why not do so? Even if it's because of this, I will still be ridiculed and humiliated by this cunning and dirty-minded bastard, but it's always better than me, just like a fool who has been kept in the dark from beginning to end, continuing like this, foolish and foolish. Hee, what about you, kid? You're a casual, careless, and reckless person with a urine-like temper. You never do that kind of low-key, flattering, and submissive behavior just for what you think is not worth it. Only when you have been thinking about it and want to gather some information from your second brother about his past experiences in the Left Guard Army on Longyu Road, will you change into a face that flatters me with a flattering and submissive expression, deliberately flattering and catering to me. Hee, and every time he looks like this, it can be said that he is suitable for all ages, young and old, and innocent. Moreover, he has experienced countless trials and tribulations. This kind of move and trick, even if it's my second brother, I don't have to think about it, I can still guess that the 6 sons of the Han family, those naughty and dirty thoughts in their stomachs, are clean and refreshing. Only you, a foolish and stubborn naive child, can persist so persistently. Your self-proclaimed shrewd calculation, ha. Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, was mocked by Liang Zanwu with his gun and stick, talking about a speechless and stunned young man named Liu Lang, just like a silly goose, staring blankly at the back of his horse. Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, was so happy that he couldn't bear to laugh and fell, ha. I'm talking about Liuzi. With the friendship between our 2 brothers, you don't have to give it to second brother anymore. Let's use those useless tricks. Ha. But if you have anything you want to know, brother, just ask your second brother. As for whether I can tell you, or whether it's appropriate for me to tell you clearly, then it all depends on my brother's mood at that time, whether it was good or bad. How was it? Ha. Listening to Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, this despicable scoundrel, with some sarcastic remarks resembling those of a mischievous scoundrel. Knowing that he could no longer fulfill his wish today, the 6th son of the Han family, looking into the eyes of Liang Zanwu, had already emitted a fierce and evil light that wanted to devour people. Looking at Liang Lao sitting on the back of his horse with hatred, he smiled with a twisted expression. What had long been infuriated was Liu Lang, who had itchy teeth and a smoky head. He felt like he was holding a burning flame all over his body, and that surging sensation of explosion really made him feel a very strong impulse. If it weren't for this kid, he would still be a bit self-aware. If the difference in strength between himself and Liang Zanwu was too great and there was no chance of winning, then this vengeful and never overnight guy would surely come forward and tear Liang Zanwu's tattered mouth apart one by one. However, the 6 sons of the Han family, who are stubborn by nature, like stubborn donkeys and never turn back, wouldn't they be such kind masters who compromise and swallow their pride? The method of using a frontal and rigid approach is truly a tattered tactic of not doing anything but not dying and self-deprecating. So, with the cunning and despicable tactics, we Han Liu Lang, Han Ying, and Han Zhuohua still have some basic skills. Can we play tricks with Liang Lao? Two eyes, no big or small, were immediately bulging, and the rolling Han Ying boy was definitely worthy of himself. He was the title of the ancestor of the mischievous and rogue gang in the office's playboy circle. As soon as his eyes closed and opened, a green and sinister light had already shone through the eyes of the scoundrel. A few eerie smiles appeared at the corner of one side of his mouth. However, such a eerie and sinister smile was just a fleeting moment at the corner of the bastard's mouth, so, with a look of anger on his face, he immediately gave Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, a look of anger. Then, like a wronged and resentful melon child, he was facing his own father and brother, showing off his temper and face, with a foul face and puffing his cheeks, angrily extending a hand towards the second son of the Liang family. At the same time, this guy's mouth also forcefully squeezed out a two-word sentence, which really made Liang Zanwu feel inexplicable and puzzled. Bring it. The sudden act of being taken by the young man Liu Lang made Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, look like a monk-in-law. He had no idea, just like a foolish deer looking at another foolish deer, staring blankly at the angry Han family's sixth son. At this moment, he sincerely hoped that the little troublemaker on the other side could explain to him clearly that the two words he uttered were his true thoughts and intentions. However, with a deep sense of grievance and resentment, Liu Lang Han Ying, who was unwilling to pay too much attention to Liang Lao, a scoundrel, also opened up his own speaking mode, which was as precious as gold. He looked coldly at Liang Lao, who was confused, and angrily pushed out a two-word truth from between his teeth. Face scarf. Upon hearing these words, I couldn't help but be taken aback for a moment. Only then did I suddenly realize that the Liang family's Erlang had almost exhausted all his efforts to breastfeed. He reluctantly held back and didn't let himself laugh out loud again on the spot, so as not to be stimulated again by this, and the speed of his face turning, which was far faster than the speed of his book flipping, was a bastard. And the true feelings in his heart are actually ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha, I'm really laughing to death. Not long ago, this shameless bastard was like a crazy thug, casually abandoning the burlap cloth he used to cover his face like a bare shoe. But now, in order to cover his face, wind, and keep warm, this single guy, who has been single for a while, has to put down his figure and face, and ask for a burlap cloth to cover his face and keep warm. Is it really a good cycle of the world, who has been spared by the heavens? Ha ha ha. Liang Zanwu, holding back the surging smile in his heart, thrust his hand towards the leather bag on the side of the saddle, and quickly twisted his large, almost twisted face to the side that the sixth son of the Han family couldn't see. However, with a strange sound of hiss, coming, and this guy's constantly twisted and swaying body, he still betrayed this dirty-minded guy, who had a very happy mood of eating melon and watching the play. And Liang Lao's extraordinary move was also a young boy named Liu Lang who turned his hand towards him and his angry eyes. He was really angry, and his heart was filled with inexplicable anger. However, because he couldn't bear to act recklessly and didn't dare to make mistakes, he had to forcefully endure this bad breath and shout out to He. As the second son of the Liang family, Liang Zanwu, heard a clear and still smiling shout. Keep going. A clean linen cloth was stacked in 4 squares, and with a soft, whoosh sound, it accurately landed on the palm of the Han family's sixth son's outstretched hand between the fingers of Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, the Liang family's Erlang, who had originally thought this groundless joke and farce had ended, never expected that the entire event would undergo a strange and eerie reversal at this point. But seeing Liu Lang Han Ying with a disdainful expression on his face, he lowered his eyebrows, pursed his mouth, and stared at a pair of ill-intentioned, bubble eyes. With a standard set of eyes, he didn't block the faces of the man and the mischievous rascal. He looked at Liang Lao not far away and said contemptuously, "It's not this one." Almost at the same time, he lightly turned his wrist and sandwiched the clean and tidy linen face scarf between his fingers. As he swung it back, he heard a soft, whoosh sound. The linen face scarf, which had just fallen into his hand, was returned to Zhao by this scumbag. What is even more infuriating in my heart is that this malicious guy, in the way of returning the original item, still flew straight towards the face of Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family. The mischievous act of using a linen handkerchief to directly attack the face of this despicable and contemptuous rascal made Liang Erlang, who was also furious, raise his hand and catch the linen handkerchief flying towards him. Just as he was preparing to teach this shameless scoundrel a lesson that would last him a long time, he heard the inexplicable words from the young man Liu Lang, "It's not this part." Liang Erlang, who was puzzled in his heart, couldn't help but be taken aback by it again. "Not this one." "So, which piece is that? Why don't I remember that on my own body? I even brought a different piece specifically for this kid." It's really confusing and confusing. What kind of ghost and demon did this reckless and unpretentious bastard do this time? Chapter 9. The Revenge of the Liang Family Erlang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just as Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family who was confused and inexplicable, was constantly slandering, another rascal boy came to his ears, whispering cold words word by word. However, this time, in order to clearly and thoroughly express his true intention, the scoundrel, who had just been reluctant to use words like gold, had to add more words and phrases under the premise of explaining his true intention, wasting some of his already worthless saliva. What a certain family wants is not this kind of hard, prickly, burlap towel that covers your face like a needle pricking and scratching. They want the silk cotton face towel you carry inside your sleeve. Looking at Liang Lauer with a look of surprise and amazement, a sense of inexplicable pleasure immediately appeared in the Han family's little 6 sons. The corners of their mouths slightly grinned, and after secretly chuckling, they continued to say word by word, "A silk and cotton face scarf, wrapped around their face, is smooth and warm, and won't harm the face and skin of a certain family. I want the one inside your sleeve." Hee. A certain family knows that the silk scarf is a mandarin duck playing with water silk cotton embroidered and sewn by her sister-in-law herself. Paddle. After arrogantly making his rude request, he realized that it was already a matter of pleasure, gratitude, and revenge. Han Ying, the 6th prince with a heart full of malice, sneered coldly and uttered some despicable words that made the second son of the Liang family even more unbelievable. Hee, if you don't give it to me, be careful that I will tell my second sister-in-law before the end of the month, while she is pregnant, in the Pingkong restaurant. After getting drunk and fighting against the 3rd son of the Guawazi in the Zhugong mansion for beauty and trouble, I will tell her clearly and clearly. Hee. Second brother, do you need to think carefully about the connections and causal reasons behind this? Hee, don't blame me for not warning you in advance. After speaking confidently, Han Lulang, who had a smug expression on his face, didn't forget the threats he thought he was clever. He raised his chin and gestured arrogantly at Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family who was stunned and dumbfounded, to show off the scoundrel on the other side. He quickly followed me and obediently put on the silk and cotton face scarf inside his sleeves, without any further resistance. But when he saw Liang Zanwu, the second son of the Liang family, with a stunned and respectful expression on his face, he looked at him in amazement. The handsome young rascal had an incredulous expression in his eyes. At this moment, he could hardly believe that such words of hiding a knife in a smile, stabbing someone behind the scenes, and selling one's brother for revenge, could be spoken confidently and freely from his own young brother, Liu Lang, who, although not a single mother, was even better than his own biological brother. And it also uses a domineering tone. Old. Cough up, is this his uncle's? Also okay. If it weren't for you, a reckless and troublemaking bastard, because you couldn't bear it, the character and conduct of Tang Mu, the 3rd son of the Zhugong mansion, would have made you want to compete with Tang Mu, the 3rd son, and the younger brothers of Gao Liang, who are surrounded by wolves and dogs, after getting drunk. You said you, a young man of 6, can't compete for the embarrassment and filth of Tang Mu and his gang when it comes to fighting for fame and entanglement with others. Our brothers are not here, and we are ashamed of ourselves. But then, his grandmother is a hammer. Who would have thought that you, a complete scoundrel, would not be an enemy of Tangmu, the Guawazi, when it comes to the matter of your own livelihood? Your martial arts and martial arts skills, one is the Imperial Guards of the Feathered Forest, with the commander of the left Xianyo Guard, Xianyo Bei, and the other is the only one in the area of the Shinong Temple, with civil officials and minor officials in the 6th rank. The result of such a competition is truly embarrassing and shameless. In order to save the face of this bastard boy and prevent him from being trampled on by the 3rd child Tangmu, who was too ugly, I had no choice but to force myself to act. With 3 fists and 2 kicks, I placed myself behind the arrogant Tangmu and his group of wolves and dogs, and finally resolved a previously boring entanglement and dispute. How did it end up in the mouth of your bag of killing talents, but it turned into such language and rhetoric that distorts black and white, confuses right and wrong, refers to deer as horses, and recognizes turtles as turtles. It's really frustrating. Your sister. In .law it's your second sister. In .law again. But if there's any bullshit or trivial matter, you shameless and ruthless killer, you know how to move out of your second sister. In .law, this true God, and threaten, hijack, coerce a certain family. Why don't you say that your second sister. In .law, Duan Honger, is already your Han family's 6th cousin, the younger cousin of your legitimate mother's uncle's family. Anything that causes trouble to your second sister. In .law and your part-time cousin Duan Honger will eventually be known by your Han family's mother and aunt, Xiao Lu of the Han family. You should know that the mother of the 6 sons of the Han family, in the circle of playboy officials, Gao Liang's children, or even in their mansion in Chang'an, the eyes of the Xuanqi Yinyang. That plan is a nightmare-level super terrifying place. You despicable Liu Lang kid. It seems that this time, it is really necessary to teach you a lesson, so that you can be more attentive and remember, and know that your second brother's tiger beard is definitely not you, the lawless and naughty monkey, and you can play with it. But when he thought of this, his expression immediately changed. Liang Zanwu, who gritted his teeth, glared fiercely at Han Ying, who was sitting on the back of a horse and had a face full of respect. However, this rebellious and unruly rascal's attitude at this moment was like that of a king who had eaten a weight. It was determined to confront Liang Laoer and Liang Zanwu to the end, causing him a great embarrassment. Even if he had to face a huge threat of military intimidation from Liang Zanwu, the 2nd son of the Liang family, he remained unwavering and willing to do so. As he moved, seeing his own threats of force and violence, it was as if he had kicked onto an iron plate, and Liang Erlang, who was already determined to be fruitless, was disappointed. As he was about to adopt a compromise strategy, he accidentally touched a token in his arms with his fingers, which made him feel as if he had been helped by a god. Suddenly, he developed a fearless and ambitious spirit of competing with no one. Liang Zanwu, who suddenly showed a playful and relieved expression on his face, looked at the young man in front of him with a smile that could be described as domineering, arrogant, and despicable. He casually threw the already tangled linen face scarf at him. "Dream it," was also coldly squeezed out of my mouth. Then, another sentence came, "Just this one, do you guys like it or not?" After speaking, there was a clear sound of scolding the horse. "Drive." And the whip in his hand also pulled out a series of brilliant and beautiful whip flowers, followed by a few crisp whips. Under the surprised and astonished gaze of Han Ying, the 2nd son of the Liang family, Liang Zanwu, with a contemptuous expression on his face, drove the BMW mount under his crotch, along with the transfer military horse following closely behind, and headed straight for the forked town below the mountain slope, galloping away. Leaving only the arrogant and complacent expression on his face, Liu Lang, who had never retreated, awkwardly held on to the ball that had already flown back and forth in the air. With a linen face towel that had changed hands twice, he rode alone, accompanied by the cunning, slippery, and lazy miscellaneous fur and leather beast, scattered on the desolate and cold highlands of the mountain, amidst the flying wind, smoke, and dust in the sky. Chakou town, about 30 miles north of Daizhou city. This is one of the 10 major roads in the Tang Empire, and the location of Chakou is clearly marked in the topographic map of the entire Hedong Road Daizhou Prefecture. Since the spring and autumn period and the Warring States period, the famous King Wuling of Zhao, with his strong and powerful Hu clothing, cavalry, and archery military reforms, has repeatedly defeated nomadic tribes such as Lin Hu and Lu Fan here. After establishing military strongholds such as Yunzhong, Yanmen, and Daijun in the treacherous and difficult-to-attack areas, the offensive and defensive relationship between the Huaxia ethnic group in the northern Jin region and the nomadic ethnic groups such as Lin Hu and Lu Fan has been completely changed. This can be considered as a complete opening up of the Chinese agricultural ethnic groups in the Central Plains, as well as the many nomadic ethnic groups from the northern grasslands and vast deserts and seas, which have been engaged in a 1,000-year-long campaign, war, love and hate, and disputes. From then on, regardless of whether it was Emperor Qin Shi Huang Zhao Zheng who ruled the country, he launched a northern attack on the Xiongnu, recaptured Hunan, and used the power of the Great Qin Empire to build the Great Wall of thousands of miles. It was still the White Deng Siege of Liu Bang, the founder of the former Han dynasty. Whether it was the renowned Emperor Wu of Han, who created the eternal name of enfeoffment of wolves in Su, meditation in Gaian, drinking horses in the Han Sea, and swallowing stones in Yanran. It was still the period of 5 barbarians and splendors, when all the clothing and attire of the Han family migrated south. Whether it was Emperor Wen of the former Sui dynasty or Emperor Yang, these two emperors achieved great success in attacking nomadic tribes such as the Turks, Khitans, Shirwei, and Ruren in the north. During the Tang dynasty, His Majesty Emperor Taizong suffered the Wei River humiliation on the banks of the Wei River in the early years of his reign in Zhengguan. In the 4th year of the Zhengguan reign, His Majesty Emperor Taizong dispatched his famous generals and brave generals, Wei Gong Li Jing, In Gong Li Ji, Hua Gong Chai Shao, and Yan Gong Zhang Gong Jin, along with Wu and County Duke Shui Wanche, to command tens of thousands of the Tang Empire. With the elite Tiger Ben Iron Cavalry, they annihilated the powerful Eastern Turkic Empire in one fell swoop. Chapter 10. Chakou Town in Key Transportation Areas. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. And after completely defeating the Western Turkic power group, they were driven westward, thousands of miles away. As a result, it laid the foundation for the northwest frontier of the Tang Empire, including the grasslands, deserts, vast seas, and Gobi. Since then, there have been no major beacon wars. After experiencing thousands of years of gold and iron horses, beacon fires, smoke and dust, time flies, wind, frost, rain and snow, the reason why Chakou still belongs to the Chinese Li Shu, common people and villagers in the land of northern Jin, persisting in their blood and continuing the ancient name of 1,000 years. In addition to the wars and historical heritage mentioned above, according to Su Shen's Shuoenjiezi, in the later Han dynasty, the definition of the word fork is as the name suggests. This is the place where the road forks. Throughout the Zhengguan period of the Guo dynasty, Li Tai, the former king of Wei, compiled and wrote the Guo Di Ji, which includes a geographical and public opinion map of the 10 provinces and 358 prefectures in the world. The specific distribution of mountains, rivers, water flows, and geographical landforms on the land of Sanjin, from north to south and from top to bottom, are respectively the northern foothills of Hengshan Mountain, the eastern foothills of Guansan Mountain, and the western foothills of Xiong'er Mountain in northern Shaanxi. Surrounded by mountains and steep ridges, the Yunzhou Basin is formed by the accumulation of mulberry water and muddy water. The southern foot of Hengshan Mountain, the eastern foot of Yunzhong Mountain, and the northern foot of Mount Wutai are surrounded by mountains, and the Yiding Basin in northeastern Shaanxi is formed by Hutua water and clear water, the eastern foot of Luoyang Mountain, the southern foot of Mount Wutai, the western foot of Taiyue Mountain, and the northern foot of Zhongqiao Mountain are surrounded by mountains, which are the Jinyang, Jinzhou, and Puzhou Basins alluvial by Fenshui, the western and southern foothills of the Taiheng Mountains, the eastern foothills of the Taiyue Mountains, and the northern foothills of the Taiheng Mountains and Wangu Mountains are all surrounded by towering mountains and ridges, forming the Luzhou Basin in southern Shaanxi. which is formed by the alluvial deposits of the Qingjiang, Shuizhang, and Qinshui rivers. To the east of the Great River, Guansan Mountain, Luya Mountain, and the western foothills of Liang Mountain extend from south to north all the way to Longmen and Hukou, until Puzhou leads to the Lus Plateau at the Pujin Ferry in the hinterland of Guangzhou. The vast land of the Three Jin dynasty in the Hedong Road, apart from the few old basins and official post roads that provide a large number of vehicles, horses, and goods for transportation, are either surrounded by endless mountains facing each other or blocked by countless towering mountains, rapids, and deep valleys. The location of Chakou is precisely the capital city of Taiyuan in Bingzhou on Hedong Road, leading to the northern part of the Tang Empire, including the Anbei and Chanyu protectorates, as well as the Annong protectorate in the coastal area of Liaodong, and the Hutua Ancient Road, Sangdan Ancient Road, and Hanshui Ancient Road in the military stronghold of Yuzhou on Hebei Road, which are the most crucial nodes. It takes about 400 miles from Chakou to reach the military stronghold of Hedong Road. Taiyuan City, where the Governor-General's office of Bingzhou is located, from Chakou to the northeast, along the Yiding Basin between the southern foot of Hengshan Mountain and the northern foot of Mount Wutai, passing Fanshi, Lingqiu and Liuyuan, passing Fihuxing, one of the 8 Taiheng Xings, out of Taiheng Mountain to Yixian County in Zhuozhou, and finally arriving at the military center of Hebei Road. Yuzhou Prefecture, where Yusi Yamen of Yuzhou Duda Mansion is located, traveling northward from Chakou passing through Yanmen Xiongwan, crossing the Hengshan Mountains, along the Luya Mountain and the eastern foot of Guansan Mountain, along the Muddy and Sangdan River ancient roads, passing through Shanin and Huiran to reach Yunzhou Military Prefecture. Afterwards, heading north from Dishing Ancient Fortress to the Great Wall border, one can finally reach the base of Chanyu Dada Protectorate in the northern part of the Great Tang Empire. The Surrender City, after passing through the Yinshan Mountains and the northern desert on the southern grasslands of the surrendered city from the base of the Danyu Protectorate, a journey of about 3,000 miles will lead to the northern grasslands and the highlands of the Han Sea where the Anbei Protectorate is located, traveling westward from Chakou Town, passing through Yunzhou Mountain, Luya Mountain, and Guansan Mountain, following the ancient path of the Qin Great Wall, passing through Ningwu Pass and Shenwu Pass to Pianguan on the east bank of the Deh River, crossing the Deh River from Liaoniawan west, and traveling 200 miles northwest along the desert, one can reach the Shengzhou military mansion where the Shuafang Border Army Camp is located. It is precisely because of the location of Chakou that it is connected by transportation that the 3 major prefectures outside the northern frontier of the Tang Empire were Chanyu Protectorate, Anbei Protectorate and Antong Protectorate. It is also a transportation and connection hub, located in the northern border of the Tang Empire, with 2 major military strongholds. The Grand Governor's Office of Bingzhou and the Grand Governor's Office of Yuzhou, with the jurisdiction of the Grand Governor's Office in Bingzhou, including Shuafang and Hedong, Yuzhou, and Fanyang and Pinglu, these 4 victorious border armies stationed in the garrison camps, totaling 160,000 Tang dynasty soldiers and iron-blooded Huban. And under the command of the 2 major military conglomerates, there are scattered armies, garrisons, towns, garrisons, and other local garrison forces, as well as military post houses, emergency stations, official roads, and post roads that crisscross and intersect. It directly relates to the 3 major protectorates outside the northern frontier of the Tang Empire, the 2 major military strongholds in the northern frontier, for border army garrisons, tens of thousands of elite Tang soldiers, armored cavalry, dozens of prefectures and prefectures, hundreds of armies, garrisons, and garrisons, as well as the national destiny and military security of the foundation of the Tang dynasty in the hinterland of China such as Guangzhou and Heluo. It also directly relates to areas such as Northern Desert, Southern Desert, Hetao, and Eastern Liaoning, countless border provinces and prefectures, millions of border residents, and border soldiers, as well as the urgent affairs of people's livelihood, military armor and equipment, materials and supplies, transportation and scheduling, and even safety and survival. Therefore, as early as the beginning of the establishment of the Tang Empire, the military department Yamen had a department, which continued to use the former Sui military department Yamen and set up a military post in Shikujian. On the basis of its original regulations, it was renovated and expanded. Formed a branch post office that far surpassed other post offices in terms of scale and personnel, and directly belonged to the jurisdiction of the prefectural governor's office. In the first year of Longshuo in the Tang dynasty, which is 661 AD. In the past year of his reign, it can be truly said that he had fulfilled his unfulfilled wish of being the emperor of the Tang dynasty, Emperor Li, who was autocratic, full of wings, full of vigor, and wielding his might. In order to appease his father, Emperor Taizong, and 3 expeditions to the east to conquer Goguryeo in Liaodong, he failed 3 times but unfortunately withdrew his troops. He secretly issued an edict to prepare for an eastern expedition to Liaodong and suppress his disobedient officials, and used this as a way to comfort his father, Emperor Taizong, and his heroic spirit in heaven. In April of the first year of Longshuo, with the help of the Grand Marshal of Xinqiu Road, Duke Xing, and General Su Dingfang of Zuowei, in the 5th year of Xianqing, 660 AD, he won a great victory over the army of Biqi and overthrew the illustrious power of Biqi. Emperor Li Ji of the Tang dynasty officially began his campaign, inheriting Dabao and ascending to the throne. This was the largest war in the past 12 years to conquer Liaodong and the rebellious country of Goguryeo. In the battle, Emperor Li Ji of the Tang dynasty appointed Ren Yaxiang, the Minister of War, as the commander-in-chief of the Bajiang Road, with Qi Baihili, the general of the Left Guard, as the commander-in-chief of the Liaodong Road, Su Dingfang, the general of the Left Military Guard, as the commander-in-chief of the Pyongyang Road, Shao Sai, the Minister of Honglu, as the commander-in-chief of the Fuyu Road, Qing Mingzhen, the governor of Puzhou, as the commander-in-chief of the Gofang Road, and mobilized 200,000 Tang troops to launch multiple pincer attacks and attack Goguryeo. For a moment, on the various water and land transportation routes leading to the northern frontier of Hebei province and the military stronghold of Yuzhou Metropolitan Governor's Mansion, it can be said that there is a bustling, crowded, and continuous flow of people and vehicles. Continuously transported to the Liaodong battlefield and the Luoshui front, almost all of them are massive supplies from the 10 realms of the Tang Empire. Undoubtedly, 70.8% of these weapons, armor, military supplies, bedding, bulk supplies, military supplies, as well as the ships, chariots, and horses of the Royal Navy, as well as the marching army, were all transported continuously to the capital of Yuzhou, relying on the Grand Canal excavated during the period of Emperor Yang Guang of the former Sui dynasty. And the remaining 223% came from the vast amount of materials in the hinterland of Guanzhong and Halluo, as well as reserve soldiers, laborers, military horses, camels, and mule horse convoys who were unable to endure long-term boat transportation by water. They continued to be transported along several old roads in the land of the Three Jin dynasty, continuously flowing towards the capital city of Yuzhou, where the capital of Yuzhou was located. At this time, the importance of the crucial location of the Chakou post office was more fully reflected in the temples of the Tang dynasty, in front of the prime ministers and high-ranking officials who controlled the important affairs of the Ministry of Works. At the same time, it also highlights the various serious problems that exist in fork post houses, whether in terms of the usable scale of buildings, military camps, storage facilities, or the degree of aging that is not durable. Therefore, the second renovation and expansion of the Chakou post house, as well as the upgrade to the military department Yamanjabu Yusi, directly under the jurisdiction of the military supply post house, naturally placed the memorial documents on the desks of the Right Assistant Minister of the Shangshu, the Third Department of the Keifuitong, the British Duke Li Ji, the Minister of the Central Secretariat, the Duke of Gaoyang County Su Jingzong, as well as the Assistant Minister of the Central Secretariat and the third-rank Li Yifu under the same Central Secretariat. So, this special memorial jointly signed by the Ministry of War and the two left attendants of the Ministry of Revenue, with the Ministry of War having a department and the Ministry of Revenue having a department, was collectively presented by all the officials. Several high-ranking officials, including the Minister of Personnel and the attendants of the Ministry of Revenue, jointly endorsed and supported it. It quickly received the approval of Emperor Li Ji, and with astonishing speed and efficiency, it was approved, signed, and stamped by the 3 provincial officials. It has to be said that the officials in charge of supervising this matter have been granted permission by the current emperor. The military and household departments in the 3 provinces, who have passed special affairs, have a spirit and attitude of diligence and hard work. Under their indomitable and hands-on spirit, it only took less than 3 months for a building, whether in terms of building scale, grade regulation, military camps, storage facilities, or many other functional settings, to surpass other military post offices. Therefore, it rose from the ground at a visible speed. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.